Hello and welcome back to the British Accent Podcast. I'm Emily.
And I'm Nick. Thanks for tuning in, wherever you are, whatever you're up to right now. Whether you're walking the dog, riding the train, or just lying in bed trying to make sense of things, you're in the right place.
Today we're talking about something that quietly lives in the background of so many people's lives. That tension between the life you thought you wanted, and the one that's quietly waiting for you.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? We grow up with this picture in our heads. The job we'll have. The place we'll live. The people we'll love. We hold onto that image for dear life, thinking that if we veer off course, we've failed.
Absolutely. And yet, so many of us end up somewhere completely different. Maybe not as glamorous. Maybe not as perfect on paper. But more real. More ours. More right, somehow.
I had a moment like that a few years back. I remember thinking, this isn't how it was supposed to go. But then I looked around and realized I was actually okay. Maybe even better than okay. Just different.
I've felt that too. Like, you hit these points where you could either cling to the old plan that's clearly not working anymore, or you can soften into what life is quietly offering you instead.
And sometimes what's waiting for you isn't louder. It's not shinier. But it's more peaceful. More honest. It actually fits your heart, not just your ego.
Yes. We chase the life we thought we wanted because we think it'll make us feel enough. But sometimes, the life that's waiting for us asks us to let go of performance and step into presence.
And that takes courage. It's hard to surrender the version of life you planned for. But sometimes, letting go of that dream is exactly what clears the space for something far more meaningful.
And I think a lot of people get stuck in that place, where they're living a version of life that looks right from the outside, but doesn't feel quite right on the inside. You keep convincing yourself, this is what I wanted, even though it stopped fitting a long time ago.
Right. It's like wearing a coat that you've outgrown, but you keep it on because you paid a lot for it or it looked great in the shop. You're walking around uncomfortable, but still pretending it's fine.
And it's not always about huge decisions either. It could be something as small as your daily routine, or who you spend your time with. We don't always notice how much we're holding onto out of habit, or fear of disappointing someone.
Exactly. Sometimes, we don't realize we've outgrown a version of ourselves until we get really quiet and honest. Until we stop and think, do I even like this? Not, is it impressive, or, is it what people expect, but, is this me?
And that kind of honesty can be uncomfortable. You might discover you don't want what you worked so hard to build. You might realize the dream was never really yours to begin with, it was inherited, or influenced, or just something you thought would make you lovable.
But there's such a quiet kind of bravery in admitting that. In saying, I don't want this anymore, and choosing something softer, smaller, more in line with who you're becoming.
And it doesn't have to be dramatic either. You don't need to burn everything down. You can gently step away. You can pivot. You can start again in the same place, with a different heart.
Yeah. Starting again doesn't always mean running off to a new city or quitting your job. Sometimes it's just about waking up and choosing to see your life with clearer eyes. Asking, what's actually waiting for me if I stop chasing the old plan?
Because there's always something waiting for you. Maybe not the life you thought you wanted, but one that feels softer, steadier, like home. The kind of life that doesn't need to be broadcasted to be real. Just quietly lived.
And when you stop trying to prove something to the world, that's when life starts becoming your own again. Not what you should want, but what actually feels good to wake up to. That's where the peace is.
And I think a lot of us are scared to let go, because we've spent years tying our identity to certain titles, relationships, dreams. Letting go feels like failure, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's just making space.
Yeah, making space for the new. The version of you that's been quietly evolving while you've been holding onto an outdated version of your life. Growth doesn't always shout, it sneaks up on you. And one day, what used to fit just doesn't.
There's such tenderness in that moment. When you realize you're ready to leave the old chapter, but you're not quite sure how to begin the next. You're somewhere in between, no longer who you were, not yet who you're becoming.
That in-between is so underestimated. It's uncomfortable, yeah, but it's also where the most honest parts of you begin to surface. It's like you're meeting yourself again, with all the noise stripped away.
And sometimes, what you find there is softer than you expected. You start craving slower mornings, gentler friendships, more meaning, less performance. Less chasing. More being.
You realize you don't have to prove yourself in every room. You don't have to explain your evolution to people who only ever knew an old version of you. You can just be. Quietly. Fully. Even if no one else gets it.
That kind of freedom comes when you stop waiting for external permission to change. When you decide that you are allowed to outgrow things, even if they once meant everything to you. That's not betrayal. That's transformation.
And that transformation doesn't need to be loud. You don't need a grand announcement. Sometimes, it's just a whisper inside that says, this no longer feels like home. And you honor that.
You don't rush it. You don't judge it. You just gently begin. One breath, one decision, one small act of self-trust at a time.
And maybe that's the real victory. Not holding on, not enduring, just having the quiet courage to evolve. Even when it's messy. Even when it's lonely. Even when no one claps for it.
Because at the end of the day, the life that's waiting for you doesn't need to impress anyone. It just needs to feel like truth. And when it does, that's when you know you're finally home.
And home doesn't always look how you imagined. It might be quieter, softer, simpler. Not the picture-perfect life you once aimed for, but one that feels grounded, one that feels real.
Real in a way that doesn't need to be captured, or explained, or even understood by anyone else. Just real for you. That's what makes it enough. That's what makes it yours.
There's something powerful about learning to live for the version of yourself who no longer needs to impress the world. The one who just wants peace, alignment, stillness, and a sense of self that doesn't shift based on other people's approval.
Because when you stop chasing who you thought you should be, you make room to become who you really are. And that person. They've been waiting patiently behind all the noise, behind all the pressure, behind all the trying.
And when you finally meet them, it doesn't feel like a loud celebration. It feels like a quiet exhale. Like remembering something you didn't even know you'd forgotten. Like returning.
Returning to yourself. Not the edited version. Not the version everyone clapped for. But the real one. The one that's honest, flawed, changing, and still entirely enough.
And you realize, maybe this is what the journey was always about. Not becoming someone new, but finally feeling safe enough to be who you've been all along.
And even then, there's still fear sometimes. Fear of disappointing others, fear of letting go of all the versions of you that once made you feel seen or validated. But the truth is, if you stay in a version of your life that no longer fits, just to keep others comfortable, you'll only end up losing yourself in the process.
Exactly. We outgrow things, not because we're ungrateful, but because growth demands space. Space to breathe, to reflect, to choose differently. And that's not failure, it's evolution. Quiet, steady, necessary evolution.
Sometimes, what hurts the most is letting go of dreams that were once everything to us. But maybe those dreams weren't wrong, they were just stepping stones. Maybe they carried us as far as they were meant to, and now it's time for something new. Something more aligned with who we are now.
And it's okay if you don't have the next dream figured out yet. Sometimes we have to sit in the empty space for a while, trust the silence, and let the next vision form on its own, without forcing it, without rushing the process.
Because deep down, we know. We know when something no longer feels like home. We know when a chapter has ended, even if we haven't closed the book yet. We know when we're pretending, and when we're finally honest.
And honesty, especially with ourselves, is the beginning of peace. It doesn't promise an easy path, but it does promise a lighter one. One that doesn't weigh you down with expectations that aren't yours to carry anymore.
So if you feel yourself shifting, if something inside you whispers that it's time to let go of an old dream, an old goal, or even an old version of yourself, listen. It's not weakness. It's not failure. It's just you, growing.
And if that growth feels uncomfortable, that's okay too. Most meaningful growth does. But trust it. Honor it. Because letting go of who you thought you should be is what makes space for who you're truly becoming.
And that version of you, the one that chooses peace, presence, and alignment over pressure, that version is worth everything. You don't need to prove your worth by staying the same. You prove it by being brave enough to change.
Thanks for spending this time with us today. And wherever you are on your journey, just starting, right in the middle, or learning to let go, we see you.
You're not behind. You're not broken. You're just becoming. And that's something to be proud of. We'll see you in the next one.
Take care, and keep choosing what's real.